Okay, so the past couple of videos we've been talking about a lot of stuff, right? We've been talking about costs, we've been talking about short-run costs and long-run costs and production, cost of production, and yada, 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 yada. And to a certain degree, it's all been building or leading us to this moment. So beginning with chapter 11, we're going to turn our attention now and talk about the 4 market conditions that a firm may find itself operating in, and the 4 profit conditions that a firm may find itself in. And for this chapter 11, for this video right now, or this series of videos we'll do for chapter 11, we're only interested in the very first of the market conditions. We're going to talk about a perfectly competitive market. So we're going to talk about perfect competition, okay? All right, so let's begin by talking a little bit about the attributes. So what does a perfectly competitive market look like, all right? And hold on one sec. I'm going to try to structure this in a way that'll make sense. All right. So let's begin by talking about the goal of a firm. A firm that operates in a perfectly competitive market structure, their goal is to maximize profit. Now I'm going to let you in on a little hint. That's every firm's goal, okay? So that isn't unique to this market structure, but that's the goal of the firm, okay? Now, the rule that tells a firm how or where to maximize profit. So in other words, the thing that dictates the price and the quantity, because remember, market, what do you need? Buyer, seller, and they have to agree upon a price and a quantity, right? Well, the price and the quantity that's going to maximize the profit for the firm is the point at which marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Now, if you're thinking, wait a minute, that looks familiar, don't confuse that with marginal cost equals marginal benefit, okay? Because this is the point that tells us what is socially optimal, and this is the point that tells a firm where and how to maximize profit, okay? So 2 different points, okay? All right. Number of firms in a perfectly competitive market structure, right? There are many firms. And the products that those firms sell are almost identical. All right? So there's many substitutes for what's being sold. And in fact, they're identical to the point of being a commodity, right? The definition of commodity is, you can exchange one for the other and there's really no distinguishing features, okay? Price. In a perfectly competitive market structure, price is set by the market. And that may seem odd, right? It's like, wait a minute, don't firms always set their own price? Well, generally speaking, yes. In the other market structures we'll talk about, the firm sets the price, right? But that's one of the things that's unique about a perfectly competitive market structure is they don't have pricing power. They have to accept the price that the market gives, okay? Barriers to entry. In other words, are there barriers that keep firms from joining into the market? And the answer is no, okay? And let me give you some examples. One common example is sort of agricultural, right? So generally speaking, when you're dealing with the agricultural products, again, the products are very similar. You start talking about hay. I live outside of town a little bit, and there's all kinds of hay, all around me that people grow, and one bale of hay is just the same as another bale of hay, right? If you think about a farmer's market, you as a buyer, when you walk into a farmer's market, there's vendor after vendor after vendor selling all the same stuff, and they generally have very little power in terms of setting price and things like that. So that's an okay example. Probably the best example of a perfectly competitive market structure is the stock market. Now, I have to put asterisks on that. It's the stock market, assuming that the buyer and seller click market price. Because when you go to sell stock, you have the option as both a buyer and a seller to set the price you're either willing to, in the buyer's case, willing to accept, or in the seller's case, willing to accept, or in the buyer's case, willing to pay it. But quite frankly, most people, when they buy and sell stock, they just go click market price. And when you click the market price and you're willing to accept the market price, it's almost a perfect example of a perfectly competitive market structure, right? Because, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people selling stock. Let's just take Ford stock, okay, as an example. So there are hundreds or thousands of people selling Ford stock on any given day. One stock, ceteris paribus, is identical to another stock, because we're not differentiating right now in terms of classes of stock. But again, price is set by the market. Barriers, can you be prevented from buying stock? Can firms be or people be prevented from selling stock? No. If you have stock, you can't be prevented from selling it. And so it becomes almost a perfect example of a perfectly competitive market structure, okay? Now, let's do this. I'm just going to give you the punchline to the joke here, because when it comes to profit, there are 4 conditions. There are only 4 conditions that a firm can find themselves in. The first is economic profit, okay? So a firm, once you, and recall the definition of economic profit, right, is you're going to take total revenue and subtract out both the implicit and explicit cost. And, if you have money left over, that's economic profit. The second is zero economic profit. And if you stop and think about that for a sec, zero economic profit, is that a good place to be? Well, yeah, sure, right? Because even at zero economic profit, you're still earning an accounting profit. So from an accounting perspective, you're still making money. But it just turns out that the opportunity cost is such that you have zero economic profit. And this is sometimes, well, I'll get back to it later, but this is sometimes called normal profit, okay? And we'll talk about why later. You can have negative economic profit, and negative economic profit is called loss, economic loss. And then the fourth and final condition is shutdown, in which case the firm may decide that the best course of action is actually to shut down, okay? And again, we'll come back and talk about this in detail, but those are the 4 conditions that a firm may find itself in. Now, let's do this. Let's now combine some of the things we've been talking about, right? So I'm going to go back to my favorite equation, revenue minus cost equals profit. And let's talk about, let's draw a picture of revenue, okay? So quantity, price. All right, so if we said on price, it's set by the market. So again, if that still isn't making sense, think about it this way. Like I said, I live out in the country, right? So my neighbor over here, he's got a big sign that says hay for sale. Let's say it's $20 a bale. Okay, the guy next door, he's got a big sign that says hay for sale, $20. Guy down the street, hay for sale, $20. Well, what do you think the price of hay is? It's $20, right? And let's talk about it. So ceteris paribus, I'm going to get rid of everything else that isn't sort of the variable we're talking about right now. Let's talk about this for a sec. The market price of hay is 20 bucks. Now let's talk about why it can't be any other price right now, okay? It can't be higher than 20. Why? Because no buyer is going to pay more than 20 bucks. Why? Well, think about it. I got signs all around saying that the price of hay is 20 bucks. So why would I as a buyer pay any more than 20 bucks? So a buyer's not going to pay more than 20. And a seller, again, ceteris paribus, is not going to accept less than 20. Why? Because the seller, what's the goal? Maximize profit, right? And the seller knows that they can get 20 bucks a bale, so they're not going to ask any less than 20. So the price of a bale of hay, a bale of hay, that's hard to say, is 20 bucks. So how do you draw that? Well, if that's the only price, then in fact, the demand curve looks like that. And that's a little crooked, but there you go. And what's unique about this market structure is we know demand can also be thought of as marginal benefit, right? And let's talk about marginal revenue. So what is marginal revenue? Marginal revenue is the revenue from each additional unit of output. So for my first bale of hay, how much is the farmer going to make, the seller going to make? It's going to make 20 bucks. Okay. And when I buy a second bale of hay, what's that going to run? 20 bucks. All right. So what was the marginal revenue? What was the revenue that the seller earned on the first bale of hay? 20 bucks. What about the second bale of hay? 20 bucks. What about the third? 20 bucks. So look, that means not only does this represent demand, not only does it represent marginal benefit, it also represents marginal revenue, and all of those are equal. And that's what's unique about this market structure, okay? All right, now, we've been going for about 13 minutes, so I'm gonna stop this video and come right back and we'll combine everything together.